Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to discuss what I think most new players are doing wrong and how we can fix it. I still see a lot of people saying Dark and Darker is way too difficult. In the early stages of the playtest, the Discord was constantly spammed with the game's combat is terrible, it's way too slow, I can't ever survive, the mobs are too difficult. Well, Iron Mace has basically said that this game is meant to be difficult. They've even been kind enough to share with us that, on average it takes you 10 or more runs before you ever get your first escape. They've even shown us data and shared all this data with us after each playtest. One of them being the total players that have entered a certain map and the total players that have escaped. If you look at this information, it shows you that only about 25% of the people entering those maps are actually escaping. You break that down from the 16 players that normally enter the dungeon, it's only about 4. Today we're going to discuss how you can be one of those 4, and what you can do differently to escape easier. So, what are the keys to escape, and how do we do it more effectively? First, we must understand that Dark and Darker has some constants that every player that enters the dungeon has to deal with. All 16 of you will be 1. Chasing down that blue portal. And not many people realize, but blue portals actually spawn and can spawn fairly early. So the first one to get there gets the portal. It's as simple as that. You all know you gotta find one, so get there quickly. The second thing, the circle. Every player that joins the lobby knows that they're going to be forced to the middle via the circle. The circle damages you, you can't run around outside of it. It will force you into groups of players, it will force you into groups of mobs. It is constant pressure that you have to learn to navigate. And number 3, as I just mentioned, the mobs, the PvE. There will be times where you're faced with monsters that you just have no idea how to deal with. So you have 2 options. Either you learn how to fight them, or you run, and run past them. So, those 3 things, the blue portal, the circle, and the mobs. If you can understand those 3 things well, disregard all the PvP and all the extra nonsense that comes with it, you will significantly improve your chances of escaping. Okay, so now let's look at some examples of how we can make use of that information. This is the main thing I want to see more people doing as a new player, and what it took me a really long time to learn, because truthfully, I started as a barbarian, and boy, did I struggle for a long time. And I definitely didn't do these things when I started. So I already have one of my trips into the dungeon playing that I want to use to show you guys what I mean by paying attention to those 3 things. So here we have just a standard trip into the dungeon. And what you'll see is I'm only a few minutes into this run and I'm already trying to get as far away from spawn as possible. I want to get into the center of that circle, away from my starting position so I'm not hunted down by PvPers, and I want to get through the mobs before the zone starts pushing me into them. If you're in a situation where the circle is driving you into rooms or into mobs, it is extremely tricky. You can even see in this that I'm not taking all the loot I possibly could. I'm leaving pots behind. I'm leaving items behind because I know the main goal is to get to that final portal before the next guy. And if you're on the edge of the zone, creeping around, kind of skulking about, not fighting these mobs, you're never going to make it there in time. That timer still says I have, 7 or 8 minutes left. But for the final 2 or 3 minutes of this, you're in a PvP battle or you're fighting over that last portal. That's not the situation you want to be in. You got to get out of your starting zone, get to the center, clear the rooms ahead of you so you have some, access to those portals. Because that's it. That is the main goal. Making it into the center, finding the portal before the other guy does. Or, if you become more comfortable at the game, fighting and PvPing the guy for that portal. I'm just going to speed this video up a little bit so we can see what actually happens at the end here, which kind of proves the point I'm trying to make. Basically, getting there first is extremely useful. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and try to say that this works perfectly every time. You're always going to have successful runs. It's just not that type of game. There are so many variables, so many options, and that's the beautiful part of it. The other thing that really this video doesn't consider is that PvP is a huge part of this, which is why I said get away from the starter zone because people will try to hunt you down basically. And sometimes it's just inevitable. If you're not there quick enough, you will get blocked out by 3-man parties and trios and duos, So if they're gatekeeping the portals, you have no choice but to fight. And I have many other videos showing, the fighter class, some of my successes, some of my failures, and my best moments as a solo player. But unfortunately, they're not always successful. And you will lose fights to 3 players. That is just normal. That is how it's going to be. Well, look what we found. The famous blue portal. And there's nothing too complicated about this. I simply got there first. And this kind of awkward little exchange with this guy was interesting, I guess. Didn't expect him just to full-on sprint at the portal in pure desperation, but here we are. And I just want to say, the reason why I avoided that room is exactly what's going to happen to this guy. I did not want to be stuck in that room full of mobs that I was not going to be able to fight as a solo player and trying to open the last portal. The amount of times I've seen people in this room or rooms like it, full of PvE mobs, full of skeleton champions and wraiths and stuff, you just don't make it out. You cannot open that portal as a solo player and take on the mobs with enough time left. It just doesn't happen. And this guy suffers from this. I guess the other alternative option I didn't really discuss is red portal, and you'll see why. These people certainly don't belong in red room or red zone. It is basically an act of pure desperation for them to be here, simply because they weren't the first ones to find a blue portal. So don't be these guys. Get to the portals early, get to the middle of the arena, clear the mobs in your way as fast as you can, and you'll have successful runs. Sure, I didn't get the most amazing, most broken loot in the game or anything absurdly crazy, but if you want to be successful, this is a nice way of doing it. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate all the support. I really hope you all learned something from this video, and I look forward to continuing to make quality and fun content for you guys to enjoy. I will hopefully see you all in the dungeon on February 6th. Cheers.